Her name was Lena Duarte, 46 years old, a quiet, mature beauty softened by years of exhaustion, like someone whose life had been carried more than lived. She worked the midnight shift at the central bus terminal, selling journeys she would never take herself. Under flickering fluorescent lights, surrounded by the low hum of vending machines and distant engines, she lived each night like a long exhale, waiting for the next dawn. There were nights when she caught herself watching the travelers more than their tickets. The couples holding hands, the workers stumbling and half asleep, the drunks muttering to themselves, the lonely souls staring at nothing. Sometimes she wondered if anyone ever looked at her the same way. When her shift ended, she returned home to a worn-out building on the city's edge. 6th floor. The elevator had been broken for months. A handwritten sign taped to the doors, "M manutenção desde 1998. So every night at 10:30, she'd lock her door, pull her coat tight against the corridor's cold draft, and begin the long descent down the stairwell. The air there always smelled of damp cement and old detergent, a stale, forgotten breath rising from the abandoned laundry room in the basement. To reach the street, she had to pass through it. Once a bright, busy place, the laundry room was now a grave of cracked tiles, rusted pipes, water stains like shadows spilling down the walls, and a single trembling bulb that buzzed like a dying insect. On the first night, nothing happened. She moved quickly, her footsteps echoing too loudly in the empty space, bouncing back to her in strange, warped rhythms. But halfway through, she stopped. The air felt occupied. Not noisy, not moving, just aware. A prickling ran up her arms, the kind that comes when someone is staring at you from across a room. Slowly, she turned her head toward the far corner. For an instant, she saw a faint shimmer, like heat rising off asphalt on a summer road. Then it was gone. She shrugged it off, hurried out, and caught her bus. But that night, as she sat behind the ticket booth, she couldn't shake the feeling that something had watched her leave. The next night, she felt it again. But this time, on the 2nd floor, she was halfway down the stairs when the air behind her tightened, a subtle pressure following her steps as if attached to her shadow. When she stopped, it stopped. When she turned, nothing. Only the hallway light flickering once, then again, and that same faint shimmer sliding along the wall before fading out. Her heart beat faster, not quite fear, but something dangerously close to recognition. As if something had begun to follow her routine, just like she followed hers. On the 3rd night, it weighted higher. 4th floor. She felt it climbing with her, a presence 2 floors below, matching her rhythm, like a delayed echo of her own footsteps. The building seemed to listen. Lights buzzed louder, pipes rattled with tired vibrations. Shadows thickened in corners where shadows should not exist. Lena paused on the landing, breathing slowly, whispering to herself that she was tired, overworked, imagining things born from isolation. But the feeling stayed, close, studying her. She felt suddenly exposed, as if every step she took was being memorized by something she could not see. On the 4th night, Lena hesitated at her door. Coat on, keys in hand. She stood still, listening. The building was too quiet. A stillness so deep it pressed against her ears, making her hear her own pulse. It reminded her of childhood, nights when she'd wake before a thunderstorm, feeling the air holding its breath. She stepped into the corridor, moving cautiously toward the stairs. On the 5th landing, the bulb above her flickered twice and went out. Darkness swallowed the landing below. Lena leaned forward, trying to see, her breath trembling in her throat. And then she saw it. A shape crouched low in the corner. Not a person, not a shadow. Something formless, denser than the darkness around it, as if the absence of light had learned how to lean, how to watch, how to wait. It didn't move toward her. It simply existed, patient, intentional, and horribly aware. Then it began to slide, slow, fluid, rising toward her. Lena's throat closed around a small sound, not a scream, but a tiny broken gasp, the kind someone makes when the world stops being safe. The light snapped back on. The corner was empty. She ran upstairs, heart pounding, locked her door, and didn't move until sunrise. She slept in bursts, waking to every creak, every shift of the building, convinced something was climbing, slowly, purposefully, toward her door. Lena didn't go to work the next night, or the night after. The terminal called the landlord. He climbed all 6 floors, each step slow, heavy, echoing like a heartbeat dragged through water. At the top, her door was ajar. Inside, curtains torn, furniture overturned, the air thick with sweat and stale detergent. And in the corner, he found Lena, sitting on the floor, hair disheveled, eyes wide and shimmering with terror, whispering the same words again and again. "He's coming tomorrow. He's coming tomorrow." She was taken to the hospital that evening. The next night, at the exact hour she used to leave for work, the tenants heard a noise in the stairwell. It started deep below, a single step, then another, slow, heavy, wet, climbing. From the basement and past the laundry room, up through the stairwell, toward the upper floors. On the 6th landing, the sound stopped. The lights flickered, and from deep within the vents drifted a faint scent of old soap, the kind used in laundromats decades ago. No one went to look. But the next morning, a tenant swore she saw something near the laundry room. A single damp footprint, pressed into the concrete. The rest of the floor was dry. Just that one print, facing the stairs, waiting.
It started quietly. No scream, no crash, no sign that anything had gone wrong. Just a man, and the home he thought he understood. His name was Eli Parker. 40 years old. Ordinary. In every way a man can be ordinary. He lived alone in a small apartment on the east side of the city, just 1 bedroom. A narrow kitchen, a small living room, and the hallway that tied them all together. The hallway wasn't special. Just a stretch of carpet and wall between rooms, a place too narrow for 2 people to walk side by side. Just a passage, just a shadow between spaces. At least that's what he used to believe. Then one night, something changed. Not in sound, not in sight, but in feeling. A quiet distortion in the air, subtle, like a thought he couldn't shake. The kind of shift that makes you look twice at a familiar shape and realize it's looking back. Eli woke around 2 in the morning. The world was still. The air were heavy with the silence of sleeping buildings. He didn't need a light. He knew the way. But halfway through the hallway, when he stopped, his body froze before his mind even understood why. Something was aware of him, not a person, not an intruder. Something deeper, like the darkness itself, had learned to see. The silence pressed in. Not soft, but dense. As if the air itself was holding its breath, waiting. He stood there for almost a minute, listening, waiting, not moving a muscle, then slowly what he forced himself to continue. He kept his eyes low, fixed on the door ahead. He didn't want to see what was looking back. The next night, the same thing happened. And the next, and the one after that. The hallway hadn't changed. Same walls, same floor, same faint smell of detergent. But something unseen had moved in. He felt it. The presence. The attention, like the space itself, had begun to learn him. He started sleeping with the lights on. Told himself it was silly, but the feeling didn't fade. It grew patient, intelligent. It didn't try to frighten him. It didn't rush. It just watched. Every night, Eli would stop at the edge of the hallway, staring into the dark, waiting for something to move, but nothing did. Until the fifth night. He turned on the light before leaving the bedroom. The bulb flickered once, twice, but then steadied. And that's when he saw it. Bare, damp water footprints on the floor. Starting from the living room carpet, stopping halfway through the hallway. Facing his bedroom door, each print distinct. Glistening in the weak yellow light. Too big to be his own. Too human to be anything else. He stood frozen. The hum of the bulb loud in the silence. Then, the water footprints began to fade. Slowly, the moisture sinking into the carpet. Until they were gone, Eli spent the rest of the night on the couch. Lights on. Eyes open, waiting for dawn. By morning, fear had curdled into something worse. Doubt. He knew what he had seen. But he also knew how dreams could bleed into waking. Still, he called the police. 2 officers came polite. Efficient. Professional. They dusted for prints. Checked every window, every lock. They found nothing. No moisture. No prints. No sign of entry. The only footprints they found were Eli's. The officers exchanged a look. One said softly, "Sometimes the mind plays tricks when we don't sleep." Eli didn't argue. But he didn't sleep that night, or the one after. Because when he tried, the silence came back. Heavy. Aware. Patient. He began hearing things. A hum in the walls that matched his breathing. The faint scrape of movement behind the plaster. As if the building itself was leaning closer. Once he caught his reflection in the bathroom mirror and saw the hallway behind him. Longer than it should be. Doors where there were none. Corners that shouldn't exist. He turned back. The hallway was normal again, but he didn't trust his eyes anymore. He stopped going out after dark. Ate, standing up, whispered to the silence as if it could hear him. "I know you're there. I'm not afraid. You can't come closer." But it always did. A week later, Eli called his landlord, said he heard breathing in the walls. The landlord sent maintenance. They found nothing. 2 days later, the neighbors reported a smell. When the police entered the apartment, every light was still on. The hallway perfectly clean. Except for one thing. Bare water footprints dried into the carpet fibers, leading from the hallway to the bedroom, stopping at the mirror on the far wall. But when they dusted for prints again, there were none. No sign of moisture. No trace of footprints, only his own. The report listed as unresolved psychological distress. But some nights, when the building is quiet, tenants say they hear footsteps in the hallway bare. Slow, always stopping halfway, as if waiting for the next person to forget to turn on the light.
It didn't begin with fear. It began with silence. His name was Mr. Harold Cole, 60 years old, retired bus driver. He was a man built of routine, the kind who felt safest when nothing unexpected happened. Morning coffee at 6, the evening news at 7, lights out by 10. His days were predictable, his nights even more so. He lived alone on the 5th floor of an old building on the east side, the kind where the walls breathe and carry every sound. Footsteps in the hallway, the elevator cables moaning, the radiator whispering at night. These sounds had been his companions for years, familiar, predictable, comforting, until one night, they didn't. At around 3 in the morning, Harold woke to a stillness so complete, it felt like someone had pressed their hands over his ears. Not quiet, absence. No hum of power, no wind slipping through the window frame, no distant rumble of the city he had always known to be alive. Harold sat up slowly, his heartbeat suddenly audible in his own chest, waiting for something to move. Nothing did. The air pressed against him, thick and unmoving, as though the room itself had grown dense. And through that pressure, Harold felt it. A presence, standing quietly on the other side of his bedroom door. Not footsteps, not breathing, just awareness. A feeling that something patient and deliberate, had turned its attention toward him. A small thought rose in the back of his mind. I'm not alone. And with it came a memory he didn't want. Waking up years earlier to his wife coughing in the dark, the soft sound that told him something was wrong long before he understood it. But this wasn't her. This wasn't anyone he knew. It felt older, intentional. A darkness that had learned how to listen. Harold stared at the door for minutes that stretched into something much longer. His mind cycled through possibilities. Intruder, hallucination, heart trouble, death dream, but none of them matched the cold certainty in his chest. Eventually, he lay back down, eyes open, and waited for dawn. When morning finally came, sound returned like a tide. Cars, pipes, water running in the apartment above, life reassembling itself. Harold told himself it had been a dream. He didn't believe it, but he needed to. Until the next night, when it happened again. 3:14 a.m. The silence, the weight in the air, the watcher beyond the door. Each night, the same hour. Each night, the same stillness. He tried leaving the television on, the radio humming, even the faucet dripping. But at 3:14, every sound in the world stopped. And the presence returned. And Harold felt watched, not threatened, not hunted, something stranger, as if the thing behind the door was waiting for him to acknowledge it. After days of dread, Harold decided he couldn't face it alone. He knocked on his neighbor's door. Kenji Ito, 20 years old, studying engineering at the community college. Kenji listened politely, gently, speaking with the calm certainty of someone too young to believe in things without explanations. Stress, plumbing, the mind making ghosts out of shadows. But when Harold insisted, Kenji agreed to come that night. They sat together in the dark, waiting. 3 a.m. The apartment hummed softly. 3:10, 3:14. The hum died. The clock froze mid-tick. The refrigerator light blinked out. Even the air stopped moving. Under the door, a thin shadow slipped along the baseboard. Not footsteps, not fabric, something without weight or bone. Moving like smoke that knew exactly where it was going. Kenji leaned forward. "What is that?" Harold didn't answer. A truth formed inside him. He was afraid to speak, afraid the thing in the hallway might hear him. The shadow thickened, a darker dark, collecting itself at the crack beneath the door. Then, faintly, the wood creaked. Not from pressure, from presence. Kenji reached for the handle, and instantly the temperature dropped. "Don't," Harold breathed. Kenji froze. On the lower edge of the door, the shadow pulsed once, as if something on the other side leaned in to listen. And then, as suddenly as it had come, it vanished. Sound rushed back. The refrigerator clicked on. The city stirred awake. Kenji turned on the lights. On the wood, right where the shadow had been, were 5 faint smudges. Not dirt, not grease. Something darker, almost burned into the wood. 5 fingertips. Harold touched them cautiously. The wood was warm, not like body heat, like something cooling, after fire. When they looked again, the marks were gone. Kenji didn't stay long. He said nothing more about what he'd seen. The next morning, Harold thanked him. He looked calmer, almost relieved. "It won't bother me again," he said. But that night, the lights in his apartment stayed on until sunrise. The following afternoon, a maintenance worker checked a leak in the apartment below. He knocked. No answer. He opened the door with the master key. Harold Cole was inside. Dead, sitting on the floor, his back against his bedroom door, his eyes open wide, still staring at something on the other side. No signs of struggle, no wounds, no forced entry. But the lower half of the door was blackened, scorched in the shape of a human shadow, rising just to the handle. The wood was warm. Kenji told the police he'd seen nothing unusual. He moved out that weekend. The official report listed cardiac failure under stress. But neighbors still speak of it. They say that around 3:14 a.m., when the building goes silent, a faint darkness gathers along the bottom edge of that same door. And if you stand there long enough, you can almost hear it breathe, waiting for someone else to open it.
Some things watch from the edges, from the corners, from the places we pretend are empty. And once you've noticed them, they do not go away. If this stayed with you, stay close. There are more whispers coming. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and keep your hallway lights on tonight, just in case.